Good morning. The Road Freight Association. I'm really honored to have the opportunity to come and speak here. I think it's the fourth time now. Thank you so much for the opportunity, Gavin, Chantel, Penuel, and everybody who ensures that I come back. Your ratings, those ratings are important. Thank you, Jeremy, for the reminder. So I thought that I'd focus on leadership. By the way, in the last, say, 2-3 years, I haven't come up with my own title. I think that the guys at the Road Freight Association, and I believe that it's Gavin, who comes up with these titles that they give, they are so fantastic, and they just, speak to what it is that I'm thinking about at a particular time. So I'm really grateful for this. So I thought I'd do two things: to give you the pulse check, what my diagnosis is, and then to focus a lot on this navigation aspect. And I'm going to ask you a question. If you see that, can you guess what my diagnosis is? South Africans? Please, you can shout it out. What's my diagnosis if I show this picture? Bringing back. I like that one. I like that one. It is December 2013. And our statesman is lying in hospital, and the nation wants to know what is happening. And the doctors say, critical but stable. And that is my diagnosis of South Africa at the moment in 2024, at a time when we're approaching this election. It's critical. We are approaching uncertainty, ambiguity. There's a lot of variables that we have to factor in determining whether or not this is still a country worth investing in. Thank you to Neo, who has actually showed us a picture that, in fact, to believe in South Africa is important. But also, if you're looking at geopolitically what's happening in Europe and the US, it seems to me that the best place to be is as far away from the areas of potential conflict as possible. There's talk this week of a Russia and France confrontation. They're flirting with conflict between the two of them. And there's been also references to potential conflict with the UK, where Putin was saying, if I see that some of the weapons that are used in Ukraine come from the UK, we may bomb the UK. And in fact, Russia has started to do some military drills and using tactical nuclear weapons as part of these drills. So where would you rather be? Would you rather be somewhere in Europe, should the proverbial hit the fan? Or would you be in the southernmost part of the continent, where it is far from, these places where the conflict are going to be? The criticalness or critical nature of our political environment is found in the sense that the shifts that are taking place, you would remember, I think from the very first conference, I made reference to a phenomenon of dynamic fragmentation. That this fragmentation that's taking place in our political system, first I described it as the phenomenon of the small party, how particular small parties are exiting the political stage while new ones come in, so that at any given time you have permanent small parties, or what they call short-lived parties. Unbeknown to me at the time was the fact that this trend actually also affected the big two parties for now. And also the newcomer has come and it's fragmenting just as it is consolidating as a newcomer, that is the MK party. So both the ANC and the Democratic Alliance have faced internal ructions that have manifested themselves in formations of splinter parties outside of them. So that creates, as Neo is rightly concerned, it creates a situation where we cannot locate power. In fact, in an article in August 2020, I wrote about how leveraged power, the same way that people in finance leverage money and make money from thin air, how power in coalition country governments seemed to be leveraged. That is, it was emerging, and it was not clear to see where it's constituted. It became something that is existing from thin air. And so when you see that, it's difficult to handle that because you just cannot see where the locus of power is. And I'll talk about that later. So in that sense, we're approaching uncertainty. We're in the realm of the ambiguous. And so we are critical in that sense. However, I'm going to be talking about how, from a systems theoretic point of view, which I shall explain shortly, we are in a space in which there's stability. But the stability you're not going to find by looking at each of the individual constitutive elements of South Africa. You're going to have to look at the system as a whole and its interactions in order for you to determine how stable we are. Okay, so that's my diagnosis: critical but stable. And for now, that's as much as I'm going to say about the pulse. The author of many leadership books in our time, John C. Maxwell, has got a book titled The 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. The 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. And among some of his laws, he's got what he calls the law of navigation. Anyone can steer the ship, but it takes a leader to chart the course. Anyone can steer the ship, but it takes a leader to chart the course. What this is talking to is that leaders distinguish themselves from people who've got some degree of know-how by being able to determine how best to apply that know-how in particular situations. So the gentleman that the president or the chairman referred to in Ukraine, what an amazing story. What a way to start. I thought that it's actually when you started that I realized I'm actually in tune with the spirit of the conference. And I've seen that each of the speakers since then have done elements which I generally include in my presentations, and I did not today. And this, to me, is systems. So, Gavin, you've dealt with a lot of the sector-specific issues that you're concerned about. Neo has looked at the political economic life, in a sense, in the country, minus the hardcore politics, because those things that you are talking about are what politics is about. So I want to play around this idea of charting the course in navigation. If this was a strategy course, I was going to talk about blue ocean thinking, the blue ocean strategy. So some people would say, well, when you are facing rough currents, rough seas, you have to chart the course and build the competencies to remain afloat and not sink. And blue ocean thinking would be saying, why must you be worried about the seas when you can just split them and walk on dry ground? Remember this bomb squad. You know, we've been watching Chasing the Sun, right? All of us. The bomb squad. I love the bomb squad. First of all, I watch action movies. So anything that has to do with explosives and guns fascinates me. The bomb squad. So it's a fascinating term. So South Africa distinguishes itself, as we always do very often, with the kinds of things that we get to do in this country by having a strategy of how to win scrums. And it's not eating salads that gets you to win scrums, as one Bok once said. And scrums, by the way, this is not a rugby person at all who's talking now. Only I've gotten to love rugby from watching my sons playing, so please pardon if I don't apply this theory quite well. The 6-2 split and then the 7-1 split, where you've got in your the quality of your bench, which I'm going to talk about also. The quality of your bench gives you options to really, once you've made changes, you have decisive moments in the game, and you can stay for longer. Whatever a political scientist who really didn't play rugby can interpret that to be. And then also, so you've got a quality bench, which is made up of forwards mostly, and then some 2 or 1 backline reserve. It's an amazing combination that's won the numbers for us. I mean, if you look at the body language of these guys and how they talk about each other, I think the other thing that's there that actually explains the loyalty is love, is pride, is confidence, and in what they can do. So they're a very confident group of people. The Mbonambis, the Nches, and the Kitsov. I hope Kitsov does play forward as a person who cannot read once they are out there. So a moment, so please hold this thought about how competent and how great this weapon of the bomb squad is. Hold it, please. Don't lose it. It's a crucial moment in our match against France. And we get a crucial penalty. We have a strategy that has been proven that gives us maximum results. Boys who can push, and when they give us maximum results, they give us a try and a conversion. However, they also had another competency in the team, and that's the competency of kicking for goal. All right, kicking for the posts. Sidetrack a little bit. I watched how the debate in South Africa was going on between Mani Libbok and Handré Pollard. And we had this debate in ways that we could not have had it about 10 years ago. I was looking at what young people call black Twitter, arguing very strongly that we needed Handré Pollard to be called in because of where the kind of situations we were facing in the rugby, in the tournament. Anyway, this was amazing that we could have this debate, and the color of these guys' skin didn't matter for the most part in terms of that, how that national conversation was going. We were talking about how a white player needs to come and replace a black player. And the focus of that debate was their competencies. The coaches had defended themselves that the reason why they had picked Mani in the first place is that he's a better player in terms of creativity, blah, 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 and this is the future. But they agreed with South Africans across the board at the time that in the situations that we were confronting in the World Cup, we didn't need that kind of player, number 10. We needed somebody who had the competencies of kicking, right? And so back to this moment. Handré Pollard says, we were busy still wondering what we were going to do at this moment. Until that time that Bongi Mbonambi went to the ref and said, we are going to take the shot. And then he came shouting in my ear, this is for South Africa. And Handré Pollard, what a humble player. Handré Pollard tells the story on a YouTube clip that's gone around. He tells the story of how this was such an inspiration for him to have one of his colleagues have so much confidence that he didn't even confer with him first as to whether they were going to kick. Bongi was the acting captain at the time, decided that I know we do have the bomb squad, but we are at a moment where we need another strategy that we know also works. And for me, this is this example of a leader that can chart the course. As I said, I don't know rugby, and I may have misinterpreted everything what that moment was, right? But if you want to know more about what I think rugby means for us and what we've done in rugby, check out this article that I wrote. I thought the date was also appearing, but anyway, you can check it. I wrote this after I had asked my son to pick up a team, and I'm not going to tell that story. He did pick up a team based on the lenses that a generation before me and mine that I adopted. That team was not transformed in the sense of transformed. And my son explained to me how he picked the team. The captain was black, the majority players were white. And anyway, he explained everything else in terms of how things fit together. And how in rugby, this is what they've done in rugby. They have perfected the art of searching and finding talent and then making that talent available in platforms where it can thrive. In this article, I argue that there's no more pressure that's political that's needed in rugby because they've fought the initial battles and now we have gained momentum in order for us to continue to see results based on what they do in the entire value chain from school all the way to the national team. And it's an exciting place to be. Now, if we could do that in rugby, we can do it elsewhere. So let me talk about these two theoretical approaches that I said I was going to talk about. It's systems theory and chaos. Remember now, I'm trying to explain this concept of navigation. Because for me, what's happened in the box is navigation. It's leadership that's effective, that not only knows when to take particular decisions and use particular competencies, but knows how to harness those competencies. I mean, we talk about Rassi a lot, but it was Hanneke Meyer who made the biggest bet on Handré Pollard many years ago. Not as the captain of the Springboks, but way back when he was a junior player that was coming up. Now, general systems theory is this idea that things are interrelated and interdependent. Interrelated, interdependent. And that the whole is greater than its constitutive parts. When we look at something, what's happening today, you're hearing a range of presentations which are presented by individuals, but I'm liking the emergent theme is that there's a coherent flow of presentations here that are talking to the condition of doing business in South Africa at this time, and I'm going to try and run fast through these slides. What I would like to highlight about systems theory is this idea of a hold-on. A hold-on. A hold-on is a system which in itself is a whole, but in relation to others, it's only a part. And two qualities about it are important, is that it has a tendency to integrate so that it can function well in a system. So, for example, you are integrating as truckers here under the banner of the Road Freight Association so that you can achieve results collectively, whether those are policy or any other things that you seek to get from the state or from South Africa in general. So collectively, you are members of the RFA as a system. But also, hold-ons are wholes, that is, they are individual businesses that are here. And the thing about that is that whole loans have got both this dynamism of integrating to function effectively and be able to lobby collectively and achieve things, but also they assert their autonomy. They are self-determinant. Now, my sense here, my point about raising this is that, one, we have a whole system, the South African system, the country, which is a part in relation to Africa, which is a part in relation to the rest of the world. In it, we have individuals and organizations that are wholes in themselves, but are part in relation to bigger realities. Lastly, in terms of these theoretical constructs, chaos theory advances the point about the butterfly effect. They make the observation that a butterfly flapping its wings in one corner of the world can generate, that is the very act of flapping wings, can generate the initial conditions that can create a tornado elsewhere. And chaos theorists make the point that what we think are insignificant, small, individual actions sometimes may be the initial conditions that will trigger chaos elsewhere. The initial conditions that will trigger disproportionate outcomes, right? So why this is important is because as you apply, I like the words that you were mentioning. I don't like the fact itself, Gavin, you're saying the members of RFA are complying themselves out of business, you are saying. And you're saying that not to drive an agenda that there mustn't be compliance. You are making the point that when the system, the rest of the system doesn't work, it's affecting those who are actually compliant. And you're then calling for compliance and enforcement, really, among other things. I hope that you do become a Minister of Transport so that you can, do some of these things in cabinet. So individual actions can trigger a tsunami elsewhere. It's I can't remember what the date was, but the judges in our constitutional court needed to make decisions about whether or not former President Jacob Zuma was eligible to go to parliament again. Now, because we have been at a place before where the Constitutional Court makes findings and jails the former president, and we had the riots, many people were anxious about this because they knew that this act of a Constitutional Court butterfly flapping its wings could be the initial conditions for a tornado in KZN or elsewhere in the country. So our phenomena, our political, our economic, our decisions that we take are interrelated. One person may do a simple act of firing an employee or judging the hair or putting out an advert. Simple group of people, small group of people, put out an advert that is controversial about hair for a particular group of people. And all of a sudden, it triggers political instability. Just one crazy creative sitting in some corner and not having a diverse team to say, hey, you cannot do that, or whatever. In fact, it was a diverse team, if my memory serves me well. Anyway, the point I'm making is that our phenomena are connected. Now, what I was called to do, and I had to start along that journey to drive some of the principles that I'm going to emphasize here. And I only have one slide on politics, then I go back to the philosophical that I was talking about. So you'd recall that when I started speaking here, I really would have, and I would be unbecoming about what I think is going to happen. I'll bring you the scenarios. And then I was speaking on a call with about 300 investors of this one multinational bank. I speak and I give scenarios, and once I was done, if the person who had procured my services phones me and says, you know what, all of that middle ground, keep it for academia. When we call you in business, we want you to make a call even if it's wrong. Because then what we do is we aggregate your call among other people and then take the emerging consensus. So next time, don't do this, no, it's possible that so-and-so can win and so-and-so can win. Give us what you think is going to happen. Make the call. So I'm making the call here. I do not think that the multi-party charter is going to be in a position to constitute a coalition come 29 May. I think what's going to happen, though, is that the ANC will have more advantage than any other grouping to constitute a coalition. Now, the question is, what are they going to do with that? And I've come up with scenarios here. I think, and this has been a consensus now, that they're going to go for the smaller parties. They're going to try and cobble together a coalition with the smaller parties. And my view is that this scenario only becomes less of a possibility, not in the early 40s, but in the 30s, which I think is unlikely. If the ANC gets support in the late 30s. I don't think that is likely. I think the ANC is going to settle between 43 to 45% as far as I'm concerned. And that is going to position them to be able to constitute a coalition or to be the most favored in constituting a coalition. Now, why would they go for the smaller parties? That's because they are unlikely to demand that the ANC swings the policy pendulum either to the left or to the right. So in that sense, then, it will become a continuity policy outlook, in terms of which you have a range of policies from the left, center-left, to the center, and sometimes center-right as far as central bank role and everything else is concerned. So my view is that the ANC comes the 1st of June, we will be hearing ANC gets 45, 44, 43% of the vote and is in serious talks with small parties to constitute a coalition. One of them said to me, we are not going to go into a coalition with the ANC. And I said, wow, that's interesting, and how adamant. And in fact, they were saying one of the things that we're going to be having to look at is the relative autonomy that political actors feel they have to act out of their own accord. Okay, relative in the sense that everything is integrated and embedded. They have to take decisions mindful of the gaze of business, the gaze of labor, the gaze of the ordinary people. That's the space within which they must take decisions. But I think smaller parties. And then I did my analysis and scenarios and realized, you know what? The second most preferred trajectory for the ANC is going to be government of national unity before either a coalition with the EFF, MK party, or with the DA. Why? Because, as I say, the ANC is mindful, the actors within the ANC are mindful of what particular choices they make mean for them internally within the party, and also externally in terms of the business environment and other stakeholders. Internally within the party, the dominant faction has been accused of creating DA light within the ANC. And it's in a position where the actors there are careful about flirting with the DA, even though some of them actually acknowledge that this is a possibility. The reason why they are careful about doing it is because I hope the minister is here and the politicians are here for them to maybe throw more light to this. Anyway, the reason why they are, in my view, is because, you see, if you've been accused by your internal political opponents of remaking the ANC into becoming a democratic alliance, if truly that is your plan, you better walk away from that with the maximum benefit. What would be the maximum benefit? The most internal support within the ANC, supportive of that move, and then continuing to support it so that you remain in control of the political processes. And my sense is that that may seem to be the case at the moment, but come 2025, we're 2 years to 2027, and we know that we begin to see ructions in the ANC. And in fact, I had a sense that if they pushed the DA-ANC coalition too soon, what would happen is that what I expect to happen from around late 2025 is going to be triggered, and it's going to happen a lot sooner than I envisage. Then you've got the EFF and MK party, or one of them, coalition. With that, the one thing that the ANC, people undermine the ANC, is the competency to manage tensions within itself. I mean, you can take everything from them. You cannot take away the fact that throughout the democratic period, political players there have been managing tensions where the left has been wanting policies, that side, business and their comrades in business have been wanting to pull it to the other side. And throughout the period, the policy has settled somewhere from center-left to center-right, or pro-society, if I can put it that way, and populist to some degree, and then pro-business. And they've retained that. Now, my argument is that an ANC that is sensitive to the gaze of markets and both domestic and foreign is not suddenly going to, when it goes and forms a coalition with it's going to be mindful of this. But also, what it's going to do is that should it happen, there will not be doomsday. Same as should an ANC-DA coalition happen, there will be some threats. In fact, because these threats are also possible even with an ANC-EFF coalition. But none of the scenarios, as far as I see things, present a doomsday situation. Why? Because these players have fought vociferously for policies that are pro-left, or whatever the case may be. My argument is that they cannot, when they had a two-thirds majority and were able to actually contain the agitations for swinging the pendulum as far as policy is concerned, to either to the left or to the right, they did that when they had a two-thirds majority. Now, my argument is that they cannot, when they have a lesser majority, now all of a sudden become a new animal that is suddenly single, one-dimensional as far as its thinking or its competencies to manage these tensions are concerned. Key things for me in terms of the way forward. We have heard about what is wrong. I didn't want to bore you with a lot of data. You've seen the data, you've seen the polls. I mean, I've seen this consensus. Maybe that's something I want to talk about. My team and I surveyed about 21 when I added myself. My team didn't think that I needed to belong to this 20. Anyway, they had this 20 analysts whom they surveyed, and we looked at what were their call on the elections, and the consensus is that we are having a coalition, and that is in tandem with the pollster consensus and also the local government national average that we saw. I see some colleagues, 33% of them, some really wonderful colleagues in the political science space, have said actually they think the ANC is going to edge it above 50%. Key thing for me in terms of our ability to chart the course and navigate away from the rough seas towards a country that succeeds? One, every butterfly has got to flap their wings. And the chairman could not give us a greater example than what a person in a war-torn country did in order to confront the reality that they found themselves in. They made a counterintuitive decision. And in fact, throughout history, it's always been those who are counterintuitive, who swim against the current, that have been able to achieve great results. For that reason, it's not been uncommon for great revolutions to come outside the industries that were affected by those resolutions. I thank you for lending me an ear and eye, and I hope that that adds to your thinking process about South Africa. Thank you.
Thank you, Ongama.